Okay, so we're diving deep today into Stoic leadership. I think a lot of people hear Stoic and they think like emotionless
Right.
or passive or something, but actually it's really relevant, maybe even more so now with all the crazy stuff going on.
Absolutely. And this report we dug into, it really gets to the heart of how Stoicism can be a really practical framework for leadership.
Yeah, so like we're all super busy, right? We need the good stuff fast, no BS.
Right.
So that's what we're doing today, cutting straight to those actionable insights. We want to leave you with those aha moments from this research on Stoic leadership to give you a really solid understanding of one, like what it even is,
Right.
two, how someone like Marcus Aurelius actually lived it, and three, how you can actually apply it in your own life, whether you're leading a team, a company, or even just yourself.
I think that's what's so compelling about this philosophy. It's not just some abstract idea, it's a way of life.
Yeah.
And the report really emphasizes that.
Yeah. Okay, so big picture first.
Mm.
What is Stoic leadership?
At its core, it's about virtue. Virtue as the guiding principle. Wisdom, justice, courage, and self-control. These are the pillars.
Okay, so not just about like being tough and ignoring your feelings.
Not at all. It's about mastering your inner world. Your thoughts, your judgments, your reactions.
But also recognizing that there's a whole lot that's outside of your control.
Right. It's not about controlling everything that happens to you, but rather how you respond to it.
And the report, I love how it lays out the fundamental tenets, the building blocks of Stoic leadership.
Yeah, it all starts with that focus on control, self-mastery, inner discipline.
And then it's about cultivating virtue. Like you said, wisdom, justice, courage, temperance. That becomes the ethical foundation for everything.
And from there, it's about responding, not reacting, not letting your emotions dictate your actions.
Embracing challenges as opportunities for growth, that's a big one.
Huge. And leading with integrity, practicing gratitude, eliminating ego, so you can make objective, clear-headed decisions.
And all of this is intertwined, personal growth, team cohesion, mission accomplishment.
Oh, absolutely. They feed into each other.
Okay, so how does this actually play out in real life? I mean, we keep talking about Marcus Aurelius. The report really dives into his leadership.
Yeah, talk about leading in turbulent times. Roman emperor, wars, plagues, internal strife,
You name it, he faced it.
and yet his leadership, rooted in Stoicism, remains steady. This is where meditations comes in.
So Meditations, for our listeners who might not be familiar, it was basically his private journal, not meant for public consumption.
Right, and yet it offers such incredible insights into his leadership. It shows how he used Stoic principles to navigate those challenges.
And I think it's important to note the report highlights this. He wasn't always a Stoic. He was drawn to philosophy early on, influenced by Epictetus's teachings, but it was a lifelong practice, this constant self-reflection.
And you see that in meditations. It's not a finished product, it's a work in progress. It's him grappling with these ideas.
But like he actually walked the walk. He oversaw the expansion of the Roman Empire, led successful military campaigns, all while dealing with things like the Tiber flood, the Antonine Plague. And he responded to these crises with incredible equanimity.
This is where Stoicism really shines. It's not about being unemotional, it's about having the tools to manage those emotions, to not be ruled by them.
Okay, so duty over personal gain, maintaining composure under pressure, leading by example with humility, wisdom, and courage.
These are all key lessons that emerge from meditations.
And the report, it actually breaks down some of these key lessons into what it calls like personal directives, these reminders he was constantly giving himself.
And these are so relevant even today. Respect and care for others. Recognize that interconnectedness we were talking about.
Be humble, be curious, continuously learning, admitting when you're wrong.
Control your emotions. Find that inner peace. Don't get swept up in negativity. Lead by example. Act for the common good.
Focus on the present. Eliminate the non-essential. Choose composure over complaint.
Understand that web of complex interdependencies.
Yay.
Maintain focus and avoid distractions. It's such a powerful set of principles.
And I think what makes them so powerful is that they are personal. He wasn't preaching, he was working through these things himself.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so relatable, so human.
Okay, so we've got this foundation, this focus on virtue, this idea of responding thoughtfully.
Right.
So then, how do those cardinal virtues, wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, how do they actually fit in?
Well, these are the practical principles. They're how those broader Stoic ideas manifest in the real world.
So it's one thing to talk about, controlling your emotions, but how do you actually do that?
Right. And that's where the virtues come in.
So take wisdom. The report really emphasizes that it's not just about being intelligent.
No, it's about having practical insight, making ethical decisions, being aware of your own biases and limitations,
And thinking about the long-term consequences of your actions.
and how those actions affect the greater good. It's a much broader perspective.
Okay, then there's justice, fairness, equity, fighting for what's right. That sounds pretty straightforward.
It is, but it also requires a lot of nuance. It's about creating equitable policies,
Sure.
acting with integrity, engaging with empathy.
And being transparent and accountable.
Exactly.
And then we have courage. This isn't just about being fearless, right?
No, it's about acting despite fear, persisting through hardship, standing firm on your principles, even when they're unpopular.
So it's endurance, resilience, embracing those challenges we talked about earlier.
Right, it's that grit to keep going when things get tough.
And finally, temperance. Balance, moderation, self-control, especially under pressure.
This is a huge one, especially in leadership roles. It's about making mindful decisions, avoiding excess, and thinking about those long-term balanced outcomes.
Not just reacting in the heat of the moment.
Exactly.
And I think it's so important to remember, the report makes this point. These virtues are all interconnected. You can't really practice one in isolation. They all reinforce each other. So let's bring it back to leadership. We talked about Marcus Aurelius. Are there other examples?
Oh, definitely. The report gives a lot of examples, both historical and contemporary. I mean, Cato the Younger, his unwavering courage and integrity.
Right.
Seneca, his wisdom and resilience in the face of exile.
Epictetus, of course. His emphasis on self-control and choosing your inner response.
And then you have more modern figures, like George Washington, known for his self-discipline and steadfastness.
Admiral James Stockdale. His resilience in captivity during the Vietnam War is a really powerful example.
Really is. And then you have contemporary leaders who might not explicitly identify as Stoics, but embody these principles.
Yeah, the report talks about Barack Obama, his calm demeanor under immense pressure.
Satya Nadella at Microsoft, his focus on ethical leadership and creating a more inclusive culture.
Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, his commitment to environmental responsibility and ethical business practices.
Even someone like Jeff Bezos, his relentless focus on customer experience, you can see that Stoic idea of controlling what you can. Warren Buffett, his simplicity, his long-term vision, his philanthropy.
Richard Branson, his authenticity, his willingness to take risks.
Ray Dalio, his emphasis on principled leadership and radical transparency.
Even Steve Jobs, his resilience and singular focus. All of these leaders, in different ways, exemplify these Stoic virtues.
And the report really analyzes this too, how Stoicism can contribute to success, like Aurelius's reign or Bezos's customer-centric approach.
But also how the absence of these virtues can lead to failure.
Right, it's not a guarantee, but it's a powerful framework.
So, okay, we're talking about Stoicism, this ancient philosophy. What does it have to say about the pressures leaders face today?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is that tension between profit and purpose.
Right, the bottom line versus doing the right thing.
Exactly, and Stoicism is very clear on this. Virtue comes first.
Yeah, the report highlights Chouinard's leadership at Patagonia. He's consistently prioritized ethical practices and environmental responsibility, even when it's meant sacrificing short-term profits.
Right, it's about that long-term vision, that commitment to values. And then there's the whole issue of power. How do you maintain ethical standards when you're in a position of power?
That's a tough one.
It is. Again, Stoicism offers guidance. Self-control, as Aurelius demonstrated, is the antidote to hubris, to that intoxicating effect of power.
It's about staying grounded, remembering your principles.
And prioritizing those long-term values over short-term gains. The report actually brings up an interesting example of this. John Burns, the former CEO of Xerox.
Oh yeah, he's known for turning the company around.
Right, and he did it by focusing on the long game, making tough decisions that were necessary for the company's survival, even if they weren't popular in the short term.
So it's not about shying away from hard choices, but making those choices with integrity, with that long-term perspective.
Exactly.
So Stoicism, it's not just about being a good person, it's about being an effective leader.
It's both. And the report actually includes perspectives from experts in different fields to kind of underscore this point. Political scientists talk about how Stoic principles, particularly wisdom and a focus on character, are crucial for effective governance.
Yeah, I mean, Plato himself said that the measure of a man is what he does with power.
And that's what Stoicism is all about, using power wisely, justly for the common good. And CEOs talk about how these principles translate into the business world. focusing on what you can control, making rational decisions, managing stress, building resilience.
And creating a positive work culture, one that's based on integrity and mutual respect.
Right. It's not just about individual success. It's about creating a system that's sustainable, ethical, and ultimately more successful in the long run.
Okay, so this has been super insightful, but I think our listeners are probably wondering, okay, how do I actually do this?
Right. It can seem daunting, but the good news is Stoicism is all about practice.
Small steps, daily habits.
It's exactly. The report outlines some really practical exercises, focusing on what's within your control. This could be as simple as making a conscious effort to choose your response to a situation instead of just reacting.
Practicing mindfulness, taking a few minutes each day to just be present, to notice your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
Journaling can be really helpful too. It allows you to reflect on your judgments, to see where you might be getting caught up in things you can't control.
The report even mentions negative visualization, which sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's about imagining the worst case scenario, not to dwell on it, but to appreciate what you have and to prepare yourself for setbacks.
Right, it's about building that resilience.
And then there are those daily habits you can cultivate. Seeking knowledge, actively learning, and expanding your understanding of the world.
Thinking critically, reasoning ethically, making decisions based on what's right, not just what's easy or expedient.
And being committed to fairness, to treating others with respect and dignity, regardless of their status or background.
Active listening is huge. Really hearing what others are saying, understanding their perspectives.
And always considering the long-term impact of your choices. How will this decision affect not just me, but the people around me, the community, the world?
And when things don't go your way, because they inevitably won't, view those setbacks as opportunities for learning and growth.
That's a big one.
It is, and it comes back to that idea of resilience.
And finally, I love this one, practicing fairness and humility. This means constantly self-reflecting, being willing to admit when you're wrong.
And being open to feedback, to different perspectives.
It's about leading by example with transparency and ethical behavior.
It's about embodying those virtues we've been talking about.
So I think the key takeaway here is that Stoic leadership is a framework, a set of principles, but it's also a practice. It's about constant self-awareness and aligning your actions with those core virtues.
It's a journey, not a destination.
For you, our listener, if you're feeling overwhelmed, just start small. Choose one Stoic virtue, maybe fairness, and try to really embody it in your next interaction. See how it shapes your experience, your decisions, your relationships.
And if you want to go deeper, I highly recommend checking out the original writings of the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. There's so much wisdom there that's still relevant today.
This leaves us with a final thought. How might consistently focusing on even just one Stoic virtue fundamentally shift how you define and achieve meaningful influence?
It's a question worth pondering.
It is. And that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.